You're listening to Hayes Radio Network, Cannabis Lifestyle Radio.
Hi, this is Daisy with CNT Media, and today we're talking with Cindy Tran. We're going to be discussing business entity and the differences between businesses and corporations. So hi, Cindy. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. And I'm with CNT Law Group, and you're right. We are going to talk about business entities.
Yeah.
So we were talking about earlier.
We were, yeah.
It's actually kind of interesting how I thought about this topic when oftentimes I get clients coming in and they want to set up a business, right?
Right.
They're like, I want to form an LLC, and I'm just like, well, why?
Right.
So what did I ask you first thing? Like, do you have your own business?
Yeah, you did. And I was like, yeah. And I was very excited. And then I thought about it, and you were like, yeah. But is it like a corporation? And I was like, no. Like, no, it's not. And I remember actually having a conversation with an attorney before. And I was so excited. I was one of those, clients that you were discussing, because I come in and I'm all, guns a-blazing, and I'm like, I want an LLC. And she's like, okay, let me ask you a few questions first, And I think people typically go for the LLC because it's a more popular one, and
it's what people know most.
Right.
What happens is oftentimes the reason why I asked you the question I did was, do you have your own business?
Right.
And everyone immediately, those who work for themselves, is like, yes, I have my own business.
Right.
And there's a difference between having your own business, which is doing business for yourself, and being employed, employing yourself.
Right.
So versus having a company.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's different. It's a technical difference, but there's the whole thing about legal entities.
Right.
So that's what we want to talk about today is what's the legal entity? What's that?
Right. So do you mind going in depth and telling us a little bit about what a legal entity actually is?
Not at all. So here's the thing. When people do business for themselves, they have their own business, and oftentimes they're like, yeah, I have my own business, but they're not thinking about the legal entity. They work for themselves, they pay themselves, and then when they do taxes, they file as themselves.
Right.
Those are what we call sole proprietors.
Right. Okay.
And entrepreneurs and whatever you want to call ourselves. We do business. Right. And some will take it one step further and do something called a DBA.
Okay.
So say Cindy Tran doing business as whatever I want to call myself, CNT Media, right? So DBAs are known as doing business as, and it's so simple. Okay. It's the simplest things. People just file with this county a fictitious business application.
Right. Yep. Oh, geez.
And so you have now you have a business name.
Right.
And you're like, I have a business. I have a business name.
Right.
And then it's like, wait, but you still file taxes as yourself. You don't have a legal entity yet.
Cindy, it's like you're looking into my past.
Right. Well, that's because everyone does that, right? Because it's the easiest thing you think about.
Absolutely.
You don't realize the differences until someone tells you, hey, there's a difference.
Right.
So when we talk about legal entities, we're talking about setting up something that's completely legally separate from you.
Oh, okay.
And my clients don't understand this, and I have first time clients, I always tell them, I was like, you look at your business, you love your business, you're making money off your business. To you, your business is a money generator.
Right.
But to other people, especially your attorneys or anyone else, it's also a liability. Right? Everything you do, if you have personal assets, the biggest liability is your business, because if you make a mistake there,
Yep.
So the reason why we want to set up legal entities is to separate your personal assets from your business activities.
Right.
And so legal entities are several types. We have partnerships, or also known as limited liability partnerships.
Okay.
We have limited liability companies, which everyone knows,
LLCs.
We have corporations.
Right.
And then the other two types is the DBAs and the sole proprietor, which does not separate you from your business. You are your business at that point, because there's no separate legal entity.
Okay.
With LLPs, LLCs, and corporations, you can have a separate tax ID.
Okay.
Right. So even with a DBA, you can set up a separate tax ID for it as well.
Right.
But when you're doing your taxes, it's a little funky. You should really talk to an accountant to make sure on that. But on the legal entity side, at least with the LLP, LLCs, and corporations, there is definitely limited liability in terms of your personal assets and your business activities.
Now, what's the difference between an EIN and a tax ID? Are those completely separate?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So you and I, as normal human beings in the United States, we have something called a Social Security number.
Right.
And that's, for lack of a better term, is also our tax ID number.
Right. Okay.
Other people have something called a tax ID, which is a TIN.
Right.
Right. Those are for those who are not U.S. citizens or residents.
Okay.
And they have tax ID numbers for purposes of reporting taxes in the U.S.
Right.
Then you have the EIN,
Okay.
which are employer identification numbers.
Okay.
And those are for businesses,
Right.
Those are for businesses. And people think about EIN, that means you have to have employees.
Right.
No, you just have to be an entity that can employ others.
Okay. See, thank you, Cindy.
so there's a difference, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. And the reason why we want to set up legal entities, it's really, again, to protect yourself.
Right.
But there's also a lot of tax benefits to it.
Right. Oh my gosh. Can we get into that really quick, Cindy?
Absolutely.
Just discussing the tax benefits that we're going to get from becoming a business entity rather than just a business or be a business owner or solopreneur.
So this is where I always talk about to my clients. It's like when you're doing business, there are several individuals, professionals that you should have on your panel of consultants. Obviously your business attorney or some attorney that knows more or less some of the business law issues, an accountant.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I say accountant, I mean accountant, not bookkeeper.
There's a difference, guys.
There's a big difference. Your bookkeeper who tracks your income and your expenses and balances your checkbook for you.
Right. Yeah,
not the same.
It's not the same caliber as an accountant who maybe they're able to see things from a more future perspective.
So an accountant is someone who more or less knows the tax laws.
Okay.
They know the tax laws. So an accountant and a tax attorney are kind of the same to that extent.
Okay.
They know the tax laws. They know what you can write off, what you cannot write off.
Okay.
Gotcha. They know they know various things, and they should.
Right.
They know also if you do business in 50 different states, the different state laws that you have to file taxes for.
Gotcha.
So I bet you didn't know that.
No.
Like
Not at all.
if you're here in California, but if you do sales to another state, you have to pay taxes there too. So an accountant would help you with that, figure that out. Definitely, anyone who's in retail, you'll notice that your right, when they're selling things to people, they have different states that they have to tax differently.
I actually even noticed that about, I used to do sales, and I actually noticed that about even county-wise, that when someone was returning an item that they purchased in Orange County, they there was a difference between LA County's taxes and Orange County's, and I was like, that doesn't make sense because it's the same state. But when I started to break it down, I was like, oh, wow.
Well, it comes down to even the city level.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it comes down to even the cities. Cities may have even a little different tax amount versus the county.
Oh, my
And when
gosh.
you do those returns, those businesses have to send that money back.
Right.
Oh,
geez.
So,
Yeah. I'm like, I don't understand because, I do the return and I'm thinking it's going to even out and it's like, oh, I owe you 9 cents. Like, it's just something random, but I was just wondering about that. But
right. Well, so for most of us, that isn't an issue, especially if we're just working in our own geographical location, but for definitely people in sales.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right. And you're dealing with people from different counties or even different states. If you have that, you definitely need to have an accountant to know what you need to do and what not. So don't quote me on this one.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
But the difference between a sole proprietor and a legal entity is definitely going to be, number one, your tax benefits.
Okay.
What you can claim as expenses versus what you have, the tax rate that you have to pay on your income tax.
Oh, wow.
It's all different, right? And then on top of that, between an LLC and a corporation, there's even more differences in terms of what you can claim as expenses and what not.
Right.
Because of the tax codes and recent changes in the tax codes has made very different. So definitely talk to an accountant. Don't talk to your business law attorney. Not me, because I don't know that enough. I know enough to say we need to talk to an accountant.
I have enough to send you to someone better equipped who can actually, kind of guide you down that path, especially because like you were saying, business, you make a mistake and that someone can come after your assets, and you definitely don't want to work hard in your personal life just to have it kind of ripped away in your business professional life.
You work really hard to be able to buy that house, and then you don't want to be doing business and making a mistake there, and then now you get sued and your house is attached to it because you individually have been sued.
Geez.
So when you have a corporation or an LLC or even an LLP, there's something that we call separation, right? We separate the business owner, the owner, from the actual business itself. Okay. So there's like a number of things that you can do, but getting into the liability part for, a little later, going back to some of the benefits. I know we were talking about retirement plans.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right. As an individual, you can put away money for retirement, like in a Roth IRA or self-directed, self-employed IRA. It's limited in how much we can do, and your accountant can obviously talk to you more about that. But as a business, in terms of a legal entity, you have a lot more options. Right?
Yeah.
Because if you're paying yourself, a payroll and you're paying payroll taxes, the employer's paying payroll taxes. The employer can also then set aside retirement funds for you. Set up some sort of retirement program, and you don't have to have other employees. You can be a one-man employee. You just have to know the difference between you being an employee and being the owner. You still have to get a payroll and pay payroll taxes as the employer. The business pays payroll taxes for you. But you as an individual will also pay your income tax. But then now you open yourself to other options that you have. Because you already realize how much you have to pay in taxes as an individual.
Guys, a quick story. I did my taxes and I was so excited because I knew we had a great year until I saw how much I owed in taxes. And I was like, well, I thought, Like,
you know what the difference
so
is also
hurt.
is when you're a sole proprietor, you don't think about it, but like for businesses, a lot of businesses, when you are a legal entity, oftentimes you pay taxes quarterly. When as a sole proprietor, you don't until the end of the year.
And then it stacks up against you.
You've been spending the money as it comes in. You're not setting it aside. And then suddenly, it's like time to do your taxes. It's like, whoa, what?
Where did this come from? Oh my gosh. I remember because I was having a virtual conference with somebody while I was doing the taxes, and they were kind of like, just kind of guiding me through the way and things like that. And I was excited because I was in the green for a while, and I was like, yeah, refund. And then it came back to the red, and I was like, ooh, that's a lot. Just being honest, because I was like, we had a great year. Cool, this is great. And then, like you said, I didn't anticipate having to pay that much in taxes. So
you should really look into it. I think I recently looked at it, and from state to state, tax rates changes as well.
Oh, wow.
So it just depends. Like if you're in Nevada, there's no state income tax, so you don't pay the state, you only pay the federal.
Oh my god.
But in California, I think the average person pays maybe 13% of their income to the state, and then we're not even talking about
federal.
the federal. So and I think those who earn even a little more, they're looking at between the federal and the state, 28 to 30%.
Oh my gosh, Cindy,
So you want to look at some of the other ways to save. I mean, and that's when we're talking about retirement and all of that. And when you have a business that's making money, you have a legal entity. The next consultant that you should be talking to is a financial advisor. Your financial advisor and your accountant should work very well together. Because your financial advisor can then talk about, let's see, about the income, what you have, and then moving some of those to retirement, how to tax deferred, tax free, whatever. But those are things that you can do with a legal entity much more than you can as an individual. But coming back to the law point of it is, from the law's point of view, the legal entity and the legal protection we have. It's all about, again, protecting your hard-earned money with the legal entity. If you have a legal business, it's separated from you, right? So if the corporation is doing business and the corporation makes a mistake, you as an individual owner may not necessarily have to take the brunt of that mistake. So, for example, I use law only because I'm in it,
Right.
So as an attorney, if we have as an individual, I can buy malpractice insurance as well.
Right.
But in the corporation's point of view, there's a number of insurances that we can buy, right? We can buy malpractice insurance. Also, I have business liability insurance, premises insurance. If someone were to fall in my office, thank God I'm not going to have to be the one who have insurance to deal with that, right? And if they sue, they're suing the company.
Right.
They're not suing me.
Yeah.
Because it's, but that's from the legal point of view. But from other businesses' point of view, if you have a shop that you're a baker,
right,
and you're using your own name and you're baking,
right,
you're a sole proprietor doing business as Kathy's Bakery or something. So here's where the difference between Kathy's Bakery LLC versus Kathy's Bakery DBA, right?
Okay.
It's if someone were to come into your bakery and purchased a croissant and found I don't know, for whatever reason, a nail was in the croissant and cut themselves up when they were eating it. When they sue you for personal injury, there's the difference there. Are they suing Kathy, doing business as Kathy Bakery, or are they suing Kathy's Bakery LLC?
Okay.
Because when they sue Kathy Bakery LLC, Kathy, the individual baker, isn't going to be responsible for that, even though she's an employee and might have been the one who baked the stuff. But the insurance will cover some of that, and even if it doesn't, they are suing the business itself
and not the individual owner.
So whatever Kathy has worked so hard for the home and car, she's not the defendant. The business is.
Okay.
And, so that's where you want to separate your personal assets from your business assets and business liability. So these legal entities are there for that reason.
Okay.
But also for other reasons too. With the legal entity, you can do so much more too. So say Kathy's Bakery is doing well and she wants to expand. Right. She as an individual doing business as Kathy's Bakery may want to bring on a partner. And at this point now she's herself, so she's going to borrow money or whatnot. She's going to have to share the profits with the partner. The partner's going to want to be able to say, well, I don't want to make croissants anymore. I want to do other stuff. But if she's an LLC or even a corporation, there's a difference. So as an LLC, she can bring on a member. Depending on the type of business you are, maybe you don't want to do an LLC because an LLC, every member has the same vote. Okay. But if you're a corporation, now it's like when we're talking expansion, we're going to go international, we're going to bring on investors. So corporations going to have different type of shares.
Okay.
We have common
and that's where shareholders come into play.
Yes, shareholders, common stock and preferred. Right. So preferred shareholders will put in money. They buy shares. They're first to get dividends, but they don't vote.
Okay. So
whereas
Kathy still has control over Kathy's Bakery, even though there are shareholders, but they don't get a say.
Because she could have given them, when the investors came in, she could have given them the preferred shares and kept the common shares for herself. So she still has management control. And the investors only get first dibs on revenue.
Okay.
But what does that matter? She's getting a payroll. She's getting a salary
so
for her
still
work
fine.
anyway. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And she still gets dividends if there's a really large amount. But then now you still maintain control of your business without having to give up that right and still be able to fundraise and get money for your expansion or whatever you're doing.
And so in this case, that's the difference between an LLC and a corporation, or is that okay?
That's the difference between an LLC and a corporation, and then the difference between just you yourself, and an LLC.
Oh, wow!
And I always recommend if you're starting to bring on a partner, you want to get into business with a partner, or friend, family members. That's when you really need to take yourself out of the DBA, the sole proprietor, and look at a formal entity, because that way you can make those differences and set those guidelines up, because an LLC will have something we call an operating agreement. So the owners in an LLC, we call them members. The members will predetermine the guidelines of how businesses work, who does what, the voting and all of that. They sign an agreement. And in a corporation, we have bylaws, which governs how the corporation works and all of that. So oftentimes you'll find like founders of a corporation will be common shareholders, they're the CEOs, they're
Right.
the officers of the corporation,
Yeah.
and then they have 50% goes to someone else who's
Right.
just the financier.
Okay.
And we call those guys silent investors.
Okay. So I have a few questions.
Sure.
Okay.
You should.
So let's say someone was actually like, let's say somebody was writing a book, right? How would they be able to, and they started off this book as in an individual or a solopreneur or, sole proprietor. How would they then be able to take that book and maybe either create a publishing company or go ahead and create it as a corporation?
Okay.
Can you go backwards like that and kind of, if
Yes
you've already
and no.
started off?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, oftentimes we call that corporate restructuring.
Okay. Nothing illegal here, guys. We're all
No, corporate restructuring happens all the time.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
with like businesses when they decide that they're going to change their structure or this and that. So that's something else. But in your sense, in terms of
Right.
the individual who created a book, so you have an idea, and then this comes in play with copyrights.
Right.
Okay. So you have an idea. You've written a book. Right. Now the question is, where are we going with this book? Are you now looking for people to finance your publication and maybe turn it into a movie script or
Right.
something like that? So once you have the book, you've written it, send it off for copyright so that you are the sole
Owner.
author
Right.
and owner of
Gotcha.
that copyright.
Gotcha.
Right? And then you can always form a corporation once you're ready to, expand
Right.
on what you're going to do with the book.
Right.
You can form the corporation, and what you will do is you yourself, as the author of the book, license the rights to your corporation
Oh.
to now publish it and do whatever they want to do with it.
Gotcha.
And that
Gotcha.
corporation can then go into partnership with studios to do
Right.
movie and assign rights to the studios to do limited rights and however that works.
Right.
But you can definitely do that. And at the end of the day, the rights are still with the original author,
Right.
right?
Right.
But but you do the work through the corporation.
Okay.
So you let the corporation engage into the different contracts with whoever's wanting to do whatever they are doing with your book,
Right.
whether it is publishing it, selling it, screenwriting it,
Right.
script play, whatever.
Right.
Different type of agreements, different licensing rights to merchandising and whatnot. But you can definitely do that. And I always recommend for those of you who are in the creative industry like that, keep the rights to yourself.
Right.
Set up a corporation
Right.
to engage with the different people that you're going to work with to sell your product,
Right.
but keep the rights to yourself.
Okay.
So that way, if something, at the end of the day, the licensing rights is with you, the individual, not the corporation. So you
Right.
don't want a chance where someone's going to invest into your corporation,
Right.
have shares in your corporation, and now suddenly also have
A
equal
vote. Yeah.
into
Gotcha.
the rights of the creative work.
Right.
So I recommend for those of you who are creative, always, register the work as yourself.
Right.
Do it on your own time, even if it's the corporation. If you own the corporation yourself,
Right.
then definitely when you do the work and all of that, register the work under yourself.
Okay.
If you're not the sole owner of your corporation, maybe you have a partner or
Right.
someone else, because I do have clients who are musicians.
Right. And they're in a band or something.
I have one
yeah.
who writes her own music, she sings, and then she has a partner that does who she calls a producer,
Okay.
who does that. So then we have a corporation where their combined work is going through that,
Right.
and then they produce for other people, and it's all done through their recording company that they call.
Right.
But separately, she still retains the rights to her creative work,
Right.
and he retains the right to his creative work.
Okay.
But then they license it to the company to then deal with wherever they're putting their music up at CD Baby or whatever.
Right.
The company handles that for them. It's
Okay.
still their company,
Right.
right? But the work itself is registered to them. So if in the future she decides that she doesn't want to run the company anymore, she's going to sell her shares,
Right.
and she's not then giving up the rights to the music herself.
Okay.
Right? She
Okay.
still has rights to those music, and
Right.
she's still entitled to royalty
Right.
as whatever the agreements
Right.
are of, versus if it was the company that registered the music,
Right.
the copyright, and they hold the copyrights to it. When she decides she's not going to be a part of the company anymore, well, she's not going to get any more royalty from the music that she
Right.
wrote because owned by the
It's
company.
all by the company. Yeah.
It's better if she owns it and she licenses it off to the company to promote it however they want.
Okay. So basically, ownership is everything.
When it comes to copyrights,
Owning the
ownership
rights.
is everything. And for those of you who are in the creative industry, definitely own your rights,
Right.
own your work yourself, and then license it off to the companies to do the publications and the promotions for you. But definitely make sure that those contracts are well drafted and you retain, it specifically states that you are the owner and you
Right.
retain the royalty rights to it, and that you have the right to cancel those licenses at your discretion.
Okay.
Okay, because you never want to give away 100% licensing right exclusively to someone else with no way of canceling those rights.
Oof.
Because
Okay.
then
They
ownership doesn't mean anything once you give them a contract that gives them everything.
100%.
Right.
Right.
Even if you own it, you've already given them 100% say in how it's going to be done, and
Right.
you did not leave yourself a way to recapture that control. So you always want to make sure in these licensing contracts you have a clause in there that allows you to maintain control, the
Right.
quality of how they're going to. You definitely don't want them to start promoting your work in a light that you don't
Right.
agree with. You
Right.
want to retain the rights to oversight and final approval, and also the right to cancel this license at any
Right.
time if you feel that they're not going in the way you want them to go.
Okay.
Okay, so for the for the creative industry, that's what we talk about.
No, that's very important, and I know a lot of probably like millennials and stuff, especially like myself. I know that when I get into a project with someone, my first thought is never to, oh my gosh, I need to protect myself or my business entity, or I need to protect my work. You kind of get excited, or you're working with friends and things like that. But that is definitely something that we should start looking into to protect ourselves.
You definitely should. And you know what? When is the best time to negotiate some of these terms?
Right.
When you're working with someone, is when you guys still love each other and you're getting
Right.
started. Right? Because then you're willing to
Right.
talk about all of the issues that may come up. You anticipate, and
Right.
what if this happens, or let's be
Right.
upfront.
Right.
What do
Absolutely.
you want out of this? What do I want out of this? Let's talk about it and put
Right.
it in paper and sign our
Right.
names to it. Don't do it a year
Yeah.
later once
Right.
you're already selling like hotcakes, and now you're like, well, you know what? I felt like I should have gone 56%. Yeah, that's not
It's too
gonna
late
work.
now,
It's
yeah.
too late now. Sentiments change.
Right.
Sentiments
Absolutely.
change.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about it early on. That's why we're here at CNT Law Group, we talk about transactions and preventing litigation and
Okay.
structuring those transactions when you start.
Right.
So we don't have to litigate it afterwards.
That's very true, though. That's very true, and I think it's a big misconception that I just feel like it's a big misconception that talking about business kind of ruins relationships and things like that. I feel like it's more important because that's how you show people that you actually care about them,
Right.
right?
If you're serious about doing business together,
Right.
then you should be able to talk about the terms and
Right.
how, and get all of that out in the air of what are you contributing? What are you expecting?
Right.
Let's just get this clear first so that we can start working on it and not have to worry about these issues later on.
Right.
Because, when something, it's great when you start and everything's great, but when things change and you have nothing to fall back on, we never discussed it.
Right.
Then
Oh,
it
geez.
breaks down. But if you go back and a year later things change, or even 5 years later things change, and like, oh, but we did talk about this and we had agreed at the time.
Right.
And it's okay if the sentiments change. You're like, well, I no longer feel that way.
Right.
Okay, we can have a discussion now, but we do have something that guides us already.
Right.
Versus,
Okay.
you never talked about it.
Right.
You never told me you wanted that.
Right.
I thought you were just writing because you enjoyed writing. I didn't know you wanted to be paid for it.
Of course I do. No.
But one of
But
the
no,
things
that's
about
very true.
yeah, and I do see not to pick on millennials, but
Hey.
you said
No.
yourself you're a millennial.
I did.
And I see a lot of you are much more creative,
Right.
and and you're doing a lot of work and you're excited about it, and it's great.
Right.
It is great, and with excitement and all that, because that helps us with advancements and all that. But
Right.
at the same time, you guys aren't thinking about some of these pitfalls.
Nope. Not at all.
It's equivalent to 100 years ago when businessmen decided on business with a handshake deal, and handshake deals are great.
Right.
But then, once you get to a certain point,
validity.
it doesn't work
Right.
anymore.
Right.
So same thing with you guys. And it's funny how times have kind of reverted itself back to the gentleman's deal, the handshake and all that. And it's great.
Right.
But there's been many, many years of litigation and the concept of litigation, the court system being there, that's going to come back. And the reason why the court system's there and all of that was because we needed some way to resolve issues.
Right.
And I talk about it all the time. What's litigation? Litigation is two adults who can't resolve their problems and having to go to someone else to resolve because they're too old to go back to mom and dad.
Oh, well,
Right. When we were kids and when we had disputes with our friends in the sandbox, we run to mom and dad who's sitting at the bench, and they will kind of work things out for us. You shouldn't have done that. That was bad, right? But now that you're adults and we're dealing with a lot more at stake,
right?
What do you do?
Right.
You litigate. You sue each other, and you go to the judge, and you ask the judge to figure it out, and ask 12 people in a jury to tell you that you're wrong or right. But if you can just talk about it in advance and agree to certain things, you don't have to go to someone else. Litigation is just adults complaining against each other with more money and more things at stake. That's all it is.
That's a really good way of looking at it, because that's really true though. And I feel like, again, like you were saying, we're not really millennials. We're not really being as conscious of those types of things. And I think we still find it that having those conversations, the whole myth like, oh, it'll ruin everything, instead of making it better. And we're doing more of prevention work than we would have to at the end if things go bad. And
prevention
things like
is
that.
Good, and that's why I talk about the transactions attorney, right? Because that's what CNT Law Group. That's all we do.
Right.
I mean, well, that's not all we do, but that's what we focus on,
Right.
because we are focusing on preventing litigation. So
Right.
when you're starting with the transaction, let's just set it up right? That way we can prevent it. But that's definitely how it should be done, because you spend way more money litigating than you will on an attorney to set up the contract the first time around, and to think about some of these issues and anticipate and talk about it. Because, alternative dispute resolution is such a big thing now, mediation and all of that. And it's great to have those, but it's also better that, if you've talked about it in advance of some of these issues, it also makes the ADR process a lot faster and quicker too. And hopefully, we're never going to be able to get rid of the court system.
Right.
It's there for a purpose.
Yeah.
But the point is, let's not get our disputes to a point where we have to go to court and air our dirty laundry that way, right?
Because when they dig, they dig.
No, they dig. But you guys like to work with each other, collaboration, all that is great. And just talk about some of these issues beforehand and come to an agreement and put it in writing. Right.
Absolutely.
But there's one thing I do tell my clients, though, about attorneys. And you're right. People say, when you start talking business, the sentiments are not there. Right. It's the same thing with when you're doing businesses and everything, and you start negotiating terms. You have, and I'm totally for this, the individuals who've been working with each other, who've been talking with each other, they have a relationship. Right. And they know each other. They're willing to work with each other. They can talk about these terms. And when you're in a good relationship, that's when you want to talk about these terms.
Right, absolutely.
But one of the things you need to think about is, well, do you know what are the terms that you should be talking about already? Right. So say like if you're going into business with your friend and you guys decide you're going to set up a legal entity, and it protects all of you. Right. Because if you have a legal entity, you're all protected. You're protected from each other as well as from the outsiders. Right. When you're doing business. But you don't know what you want to talk about. Right. Some people think about, we're going to do business. We're going to talk about, you're going to get a salary. You're going to get this much. You're going to own this much. You're going to do this much. And you're thinking about all of that. And so you form your bylaws or your operating agreements for your LLC. You're going to be responsible for this. You're going to be responsible for this. You are the creative part. I'm going to handle the finances. We each get a salary. If we don't have enough money in the company, we'll contribute to it. However, you talk about all of that. But what most of you forget to talk about is, what if we don't like her? We no longer like each other in 5 years, and one of us wants out.
Right.
What
happens then? Yeah.
Because you're a company that is not on the stock market, so no one knows. There's no value for your shares. What do you do then?
Right.
Because the person who wants out is going to be like, this company's worth way more, and I want you to buy me out at this much. And the person who's staying is like, I don't think so.
Yeah. If you're leaving by yourself and no money. No.
Right? So that's the two extremes. And so one of the things that you should talk about when you are setting that up is exactly that. Not necessarily I don't like you anymore, but I'm tired of the business. I want out.
Right.
So I have a client who, and the client is a restaurant.
Okay.
So, because it's a legal entity. So it's a restaurant. But it was a restaurant that has 6 owners.
Oof.
And basically 3 couples.
Okay. Oh, jeez.
All related.
Oh.
Brother, sister, sister, brother. So there's sibling-ish relations there. And after 40 years, one couple was like, we just want to stop working.
Right.
Right. And then the question is, well, how do I leave? What do we get out of it? I've spent 40 years working and building up this business.
Right.
And now I'm about to leave. I want to leave. I'm tired. I want to retire. None of my kids wants to step up to my position.
Right.
So what do I get out of it? So one of the things that we always talk about with our clients when you're setting up at the beginning is talk about that.
Right.
It's not that you hate each other. You're just done.
Right.
You no longer want to do this. You want to do something else. You're bored.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
So we talk about buy-sell agreements.
Buy-sell agreements. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
You talk in advance about a buy-sell agreement. When someone wants to leave, what will you offer to buy them?
Right.
And come up with a formula as to how you will evaluate your business,
okay.
so that you can give them a fair buyout.
Right. So basically, since you've worked for 40 years, this means that this amount.
Right. Well, however you want to work, because while you were working for 40 years, you were getting a payroll.
Right.
But you can't deny the fact that they've contributed to what this business is now today and what it will be in the future.
Right.
They're walking away now. The 3-way split becomes a 2-way split. But they're not getting, and they're just walking away. So it's like, well, they still contributed to bringing it from nothing to now.
Right.
And you can't, and they don't want to be forced to stay in it until they pass away just to get the benefits of what they've done.
Right.
So you want to talk about what it is, and buy-sell agreements at the beginning, once you've talked about it, is a really good way to have that conversation later on when someone wants to leave. And no one feels like they have to stay in the company just to continue to reap the benefits of what they've, what they've done. So it's a good way to everyone to kind of have an idea what they're going to get if they were leaving.
Okay.
And a buy-sell agreement definitely does that. And oftentimes you want to think about, how much you contribute, what it is worth. And people are like, well, still, if we're in the business for 40 years, how do I know?
Right.
Right. And so it's like, well, here's the thing. In advance, agree to a formula. You will get, your share for the next 5 years based on the last 3 years average income or something like that.
Okay.
Or some business would be like, we'll buy you out at your shares, whatever percentage you are, based on our last 10 years average income.
Okay.
Because in that way, that's one way to evaluate the business is what is its income.
Right. Okay.
Something like that works out. And that is way better than fighting over what your shares are worth in 10 years.
Right.
And you millennials need to think about that.
Hey, I'm going to start telling my people,
Right. And it works. This type of, all of this that we're talking about today works in traditional businesses.
Right.
But it also works in our listener-based business as well.
Okay.
Because they're going into business now. They're doing exactly all of the things that they're supposed to be with the laws changing, and they're having licenses, and they're branding their products. We have branding, right? We're branding our products. We have products.
Right.
We have multiple products.
Right. Oh,
we've got consumables. We've got so this industry is now becoming more like any other business where you have marketing, you have licensing, you have trademarks and copyrights and, all of that. So all of the traditional tools of what businesses need to think about and do, this industry should be thinking about too, and should be utilizing them as well and talking to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so another question that I have, kind of going back to the business restructuring, was that? Okay. So say you start off as a sole proprietor And then you're realizing now, like, ooh, okay, maybe I need to switch it up to a corporation.
That's not restructuring.
That's not restructuring.
Just starting.
Oh, geez,
That's just starting yourself off as a legal entity.
Okay.
That's just transitioning from being yourself
Okay.
to being a legal entity. When we talk about restructuring, we're talking about like a corporation,
right,
or an LLC who's now deciding we're going to bring in silent investors.
Okay.
And it's like, we're going to restructure. We're going to convert to a corporation.
Oh.
Or when a corporation restructures, where it's like, okay, we only had one type of shares. We're now going to have two types of shares because we want silent investors, or we want to have more shares, or we're changing our, structure, our corporate structures in terms of our CEOs and stuff like that.
Right.
But when you're a self-employed person who's been paying yourself and you're a sole proprietor and you want to have a legal entity, that's just called business formation.
Okay. Look, you aren't even on the map. Now let's pick it up for you, okay?
Exactly. Let's get you on the map.
Right. Okay. So business restructuring is basically taking a business that's already an LLC and transitioning it to a corporation or an LLP.
Yeah. So business restructuring, and I just want to be very specific. Business restructuring, the word business restructuring could be anything.
Okay.
I mean, you could be a sole proprietor and you're restructuring your business.
Right.
It's still business restructuring.
Right.
When we're talking about restructuring in a legal entity purposes, is changing the legal entity itself.
Okay.
The structure of how it's doing business, even possibly changing the type of entity it is.
Okay.
We can definitely convert from a corporation, from an LLC to a corporation. We can even convert you from a California corporation and under business restructuring, thinking that it's better to let's move to Nevada where we don't have to, let's restructure. Let's exit California. Let's convert to a Nevada corporation, and stuff like that. You can definitely do that as well.
Okay.
There's a number of things you can do. Businesses make changes all the time.
Okay.
Right? So restructuring is talking about just changes to your business, and it is a question of what is your current business, where do you want to go, and what's more beneficial for you, and then we'll figure out a plan on how we do it.
Okay.
But for you individuals who are sole proprietors, let's just let's
just
do a business
formation. Sole proprietors right now.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah. Let's talk about business formation.
Business formation. Okay, I like that.
All right. Great. And then the next time, the other consultant I was talking about is your insurance broker, because we want to talk about how to protect your business.
Okay, so you start with your accountant, and then you would talk to a financial advisor.
Financial advisor is when your business is making enough money, where you start wanting to talk about how do you protect, how do you benefit your employees, you yourself mainly too, right? For future purposes and retirement and all that. Financial advisors are great for that. Okay. They will help you talk about, establishing some sort of retirement plan and all that, and your accountant will assist on that. But when you're talking about business formation, talk to an accountant. If you've been doing business for a while and you know your income, how much you're making and all that, talk to an accountant to find out which is the better type of entity for you.
Okay.
And then talk to an attorney, because sometimes when an accountant thinks this is the best type of entity for you, the business law attorney might disagree based on the type of business you do and the exposure you have. So the accountant and the attorney is going to have to figure out a good medium for you, what's best for you. Okay. What's best tax purposes wise may not necessarily be best from a legal protection point of view. So you have to find the balance on that. And then the insurance broker is the next one. Once you have your business set up, and even if you don't have even if you don't have a legal entity, you should be thinking about certain type of insurances. Okay. But with a legal entity, there are more insurances available for you that you definitely do need to think about. Even as a sole proprietor, if you have a location, you still should have business premises liability, things like that. But depending on the type of business you have, if you have employees, there's employment policy insurances. So if you make a mistake with your employees, you might be covered. And so there's so many types. There's so many types of insurance policies available. There's so much information out there. Even us as you think we're experts, but we still have things we need to learn and keep up to date with. So talk to everyone that you can. Learn more.
Just expand your network, but also have, if you've been able to take away anything from this episode, two things. First, ownership is everything. Having the rights to your own creativity is everything, but also make sure that you are having those conversations while everybody's still happy and familiar with each other, because you don't want to get to a point where you do have to ultimately go to litigation. And it was because you didn't have that foundation to set you up at the beginning.
So our motto is always transactions are constructive.
Oh, okay. Right? Yeah, I like that.
So let's just do some constructive work here.
Right. I mean, it's preventative work, and you want to definitely make sure that everybody's ending off on a good note. So thank you so much, Cindy, for coming in and joining us today on this episode. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, we'll do some more of this next time. Make sure we protect our clients.
Yes, please.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
You're listening to Hayes Radio Network, Cannabis Lifestyle Radio.